It's time to roll the credits with Chris and Wayne. Good evening, I'm Wayne Pyle, and this is Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne. We are very grateful to be here to bring you another entertaining interview with an amazingly talented person who works in film and television.
And I'm Chris Ty, and Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne is the official video podcast of the Hunter Mountain Film Festival, which is online again this year from October 22nd through the 24th. For more information, please visit huntermountainfilmfestival.com.
Very nice, Chris. Thanks for that. So, Chris, our special guest tonight and I went to grad school together all the way back in the day, as they say.
Yes.
At the University of Delaware's Professional Theater Training Program, which is also known by the PTTP. And it was a theater training program where we performed the classics. We did Shakespeare, we did Chekhov, Aeschylus. And our guest and I even appeared together at the Utah Shakespearean Festival in a rarely performed classic called The Shoemaker's Holiday, written by an Elizabethan author named Thomas Dekker. And it caused quite a stir at the festival because my character Firk uses all of this innuendo about the male anatomy during the show. So all of the reviews were about, this character using all of these naughty words, which was hilarious.
You must have hated it.
I loved it. I loved it. It was really funny and fun to do that. But anyway, so our guest is playing this. All of the characters are these strange characters, but he's supposed to bring out this money bag, and the shoemakers are very happy about this. And we sing a whole song. Oh, the money bag. I'm glad we have the money bag. Well, one night, our guest comes out and there's no money bag. He shoots off stage. All we hear is like classic cartoon sounds of like pots and pans flying around backstage because he's looking for the money bag. In the meantime, the musical director starts the music. And we're looking at each other where we go, if we only had a money bag, if we only and he finally comes out and he's all sweaty. His Dutch boy wig was all askew and he's like, I got it. But it was a very funny story, very funny memory from that time. And I can't wait to talk to him on the show tonight. So Chris, my usual question now, do you have any experience in classical theater or any stories like that?
Well, not quite like that. I did do Shakespeare back in my day. And it was a play that ran a few times. It was 4 hours long. It was written by Samuel E. Wright, better known as Sebastian the Crab, and Mufasa.
And he played Mufasa, right?
Yeah, on Broadway in Lion King. But what I do remember, it's been a while, but it was the first time I had done anything Shakespearean. And my first thought was, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But it was like, well, I got to get through it. It's going to be such a learning and growing experience. And I just remember this one scene. I played Philip Henslow, and I had a son, Edward, who was actually older than me, the real actor, but that was okay. It all worked. And we're at an inn, and he's, of course, Shakespearean's protagonist, right? He's his enemy. And Nemesis, that's a better word. I'm chiding my son because he couldn't do anything right in terms of sabotaging Shakespeare. And anyway, I just remember saying this one line. It was something like, oh, Edward, thou art one of those players who enters an inn, claps his cup upon the table, and says, God, give me need of thee, and has no need to then draw upon the drawer. And I realized it was only till near the end of the run before I had any idea what I was talking about.
And what happened when you finally figured it out?
Well, my performance actually changed. It was
I'm sure it did.
Suddenly okay,
Well, that's great. I mean, that kind of stuff. I think I still sometimes hear Shakespearean lines and go, "Oh, that's what that means." After performing them.
Well, Sam was directing it, and I said, "Sam, I just have to ask you, what does this mean?" And I didn't do that beforehand because it was just so voluminous,
right?
And I was trying to work on so many other things.
I got you.
And getting through it, and then he told me, he was like, oh, all right. Well, whatever.
Now we try to catch those things before we go out there, right?
Theoretically, yeah.
Yeah, theoretically.
Well, let's just say,
Yeah,
a good actor would.
Yes, exactly. Well, our special guest tonight is not only a talented classical and contemporary theater performer who has worked at, like I said, the Utah Shakespearean Festival, Denver Center Theater Company,
Wow.
Milwaukee Rep, Alabama Shakespeare Festival, New York City at Lincoln Center, and the Pearl Theater, and others as well. He's also appeared on numerous television programs and in films.
And some of his films include Muti with Morgan Freeman, Home Safe, Brother's Keeper, Selma, All Eyes on Me, and Black Balsam.
And some of his TV credits include one of my favorites, Cobra Kai, Bigger, Saints and Sinners, Queen Sugar, Necessary Roughness, and Star.
He was also the executive director of the Alabama Film Office, where he worked to provide greater opportunities for employment in the state's film and entertainment sector. He's also founder of Kurlander Consulting, a strategic communication firm that has advised Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, and governmental agencies.
He's also a graduate of James Madison University, where he distinguished himself as the university's first NCAA Division I All-American in the sport of wrestling. Wow. During that time, he also earned a spot on the USA World Greco-Roman Wrestling team and was ranked among the top 10 in the world. And like we discussed earlier, he holds a Master of Fine Arts degree from the University of Delaware's PTTP, Professional Theater Training Program. Let's welcome Brian Kurlander to Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne. Welcome, Brian.
Welcome, Brian. Yay.
Thanks for being on the show. Good to see you, man.
My life sounds so good coming out of your voice.
Well, we try to, make you feel at home here on Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for being here. I know you're super busy. So let's jump right in. So do you remember that incident from the Shoemaker's Holiday?
So in all honesty, I think I wiped that memory from my memory because I have no recollection of that whatsoever. But there is a certain period of my life that I think I've erased from my memory.
Right. Yeah. Well, Chris and I definitely have done that.
But it certainly wouldn't be the first time, because I do remember in that play, there was this like crazy quick change where I went from.
That's what it was. Yep.
I go from this, from this nobleman, and they had me in this kind of Barbra Streisand Yentl. I swear, I looked like Barbra Streisand.
You did.
You
did. And it would make us laugh every time you came out. And you're like doing your dance, and you come out in your lederhosen and your Barbra Streisand wig, and we would just lose it. And then that night you came out and you just had this panic look, and your wig is going like all crazy.
Wayne,
screwed on.
Yeah. Just imagine painting a picture, for the audience, there's a Greco-Roman wrestler who's quite built and muscular with this wig you're talking about.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's right.
Well, yeah, Wayne will attest to this. It was the job of my classmates in the University of Delaware to keep me walking from side to side, just forward and back.
That's right.
They would always I'd pass them in the hall and they'd say, north and south, Brian, north and south.
That's right.
Not east and west.
That's right. You're right. I remember that. Oh my gosh. Wow. Memories coming back here. So listen, I'm doing my research, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but because sometimes IMDb isn't completely accurate, but I think I noticed that you had some TV credits from just before you went into grad school. Is that correct?
I did.
Was it Hunter and the Commish? Is that right?
Yeah. So I did a little bit of TV before I started my training. So I was when I was in undergrad, I had some friends who were in the business, and so I had an opportunity to go out to LA and do some auditions. And one of the things I auditioned for, they found a part for me on a show, Hunter, and it's how I got my SAG card. In 1989, was doing this cop show called Hunter. I was like passenger cop 2.
Right.
I had like 2 lines on the show. I was on for 5 days, but it was network television.
Nice, right.
And
what is that?
Exactly. It was network television. So you actually got paid.
Right. Yeah.
And so the money that I made from that, and then the money that I made, I had the same producer was producing a show called The Commish with Michael Chiklis.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was called down there to audition again. And I had some training under my belt at that point. I'd done some work in New York, and I had taken classes in New York and done Meisner training. So I'd made my transition from Greco-Roman wrestler to actor. and went into his office and I auditioned. He was like, "What happened to you? You actually can string a sentence together now."
Wow.
Why don't you do the show? And so they flew me up to Vancouver, and again, network television.
Nice.
They flew you first class. They picked you up in a limousine.
Nice.
Picked you up in this, 5-star hotel. It was like, that was being treated like royalty, and that experience actually paved my way through the first year and a half of grad school.
Wow. So had you already gotten into grad school and then you went and did these things and then you're like, well, I'm going to stop this and go to grad school, or what was the thinking there?
It was around the same time, because I was living in the Central Coast of California, working at a melodrama theater called the Great American Melodrama.
Oh, right. I remember you telling me about that.
Yep. Oceano, California. We had the piano player and the sawdust on the floor, and we did, I can't pay the rent. You must pay the rent.
Right.
Kind of theater. And we also did vaudeville sketches along with it. So it was really fun.
Nice.
But I went down to LA to audition for the PTTP and also audition for the COMMISH.
Nice.
So I was kind of and so I did the COMMISH right before I started grad school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And are you still doing theater?
Yeah, I'm actually in production of Heathers right now.
Awesome.
Oh,
wow.
We just opened this past weekend in Atlanta, what used to be the space where the Georgia Shakespeare Festival, unfortunately now defunct, used to perform. It's this beautiful 500-seat theater on the campus of Oglethorpe University, where I'm an adjunct professor. So some of my students are in the production, and it's a mix of professionals and a couple of students who fill out the ensemble of.
That's great. That's the
very
best.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's it been like during the pandemic for you in regards to theater?
I will tell you, the Seventh Ring of Hell was doing Three Sisters via Zoom.
Oh God.
Oh my
God.
Yeah.
Man.
Can you Chekhov is hard enough.
Yeah, and trying to do it this way with all the delays and
when you're buffering, it's
exactly.
Seriously.
Man, who did you play? Who were you playing?
Oh gosh, who was I? I can't.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, whatever. It's still difficult, no matter who it was.
It was the drunk husband.
Right. Yep. Alexei, I think. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. Like seriously, that's how horrifying.
Exactly. You just wiped it again. You wiped it out of there.
And I did another play. I can't remember the name of the play, but it was a wonderful play that actually would have worked for the medium had it not been for bad internet connections. Right. And you're like in the middle of a scene and that frozen screen.
Yeah, exactly.
So horrible. But it did teach us all how to work via Zoom.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Do a lot of Zoom auditioning.
Yeah, I did a few Zoom readings to it. It was always like
never again. Ever.
Oh man, I hope not. I hope we can get back to full. So for your audience now, they're all like, is it a full theater or is it still socially distanced?
No, it's a full theater.
Nice.
And everybody they have to show proof of vaccination before they come into the theater. They have to be masked. And
good.
And we don't, there's no Atlanta's a great market for theater. I mean, there's some really wonderful professional theaters, and a number of them are around the city that I've been fortunate to work at over the last decade. The audiences are great, and they're very receptive to the change in the status quo. But it's a very meet and greet afterwards. Like everybody wants to see you, and you have a real deep personal relationship with the audience. But that we've kind of tailored that to.
I think that's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing because theater is so like you're on stage spitting on everybody, and
I know, and it's a musical too. So
right. So you got that too, and then afterwards there was like that. That's one of the things I miss is that like, hey, so good to see you, and giving people even at film festivals now too. Like when we go to we just went over to Woodstock the other night, and it was like I wanted to hug everybody, but at the same time you're like, okay, do we do the fist bumping or the
weird gray areas?
Yeah, it's so strange. Yeah. Now you said you're teaching, right? At what's the university again?
Oglethorpe University is a little
Oglethorpe.
private liberal arts college, really close to my house. So it's really
nice. Yeah. Well, that's how I got my first teaching job. I was like, there's the school right over there. I'm going to go over and see if they need a professor.
I started off there teaching one class that And then that kind of morphed into the curriculum that I've created for this acting for the camera class. And
great.
So I'm able to bring in professionals that, talk to my students. I had a casting director in on last week to talk to them about kind of the realities of the business. And for their midterm coming up, they'll actually have a live audition in front of a casting director and a producer of a local production company that they've produced, I think, 4 or 5 movies in the last 2 years.
Great.
And they produce a number of TV series that are based out of Atlanta. So, so they have, direct exposure to professionals at the highest level of the business. So.
Nice. Very nice. Now, I often teach that same on-camera acting class as an adjunct at Vassar here in New York, which is awesome, by the way. Vassar, cool place to work. Yeah. And I ask a lot of people this question, people who teach, is like, what do you think actors who are like in a university program or just getting started in the on-camera kind of acting, what should they focus on to be camera ready these days? What do you tell your students?
I tell them something very simple. I say, you are enough. You don't have to be anything other than you. Mm-hmm. And it took me 50 years to come to that realization. And I'm 5 years into my tenure of like, I'm enough.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And it's a powerful thing, because
it is.
The idea of characterization and creating, you and I can have this conversation about structural conversations and what creates Richard III versus blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But the putting character, the idea of character aside, that television and film is about bringing your own humanity and tapping into all of that makes you. And normal human beings generally try to hide the yucky stuff, the dark stuff that makes up our humanity. Yep. It's part of everybody's humanity. But we as artists, that's the gold. Like that's the good stuff. It's like it's being able to be accepting of those dark places that we all go to and allow those to be present in the moment of whatever situation you're in. But you can't have that. You can't access that fully if you don't say to yourself, I'm enough.
I'm enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
very nice.
Very nice. That's how I start everything out. And we build from there.
Go from there. Yeah, that's a great place to start. Yeah,
it's a great lesson right there.
Yeah, very.
I hope everyone who's watching is paying attention. It's
and that's one of the reasons we do this, because I want them to pay attention.
Yes,
people like Brian Kurlander down here. Yeah, good.
And to be honest with you, for me, I feel like I'm getting a free acting lesson right now. This is awesome. But I get one every day from Wayne, so it's all good.
Well,
But Brian,
man, great. I got to watch Wayne work so much, and it was always had great admiration for the depths that Wayne can sound and the commitment that he gives to what he does.
Hey, thanks.
Like everything
You're making me turn pink. Thank you.
But dude, you were all in. Like that's
thanks. Yeah, that's
and, you sent me some, pre-screened questions, like, that's what it's all about. Like, what's the difference between, what part of your athletic career do you bring to?
Right. Yeah. We're going to ask you that soon.
It's the all in thing. Like,
that's right. No, you're right. You're right. Yep. I love that. And I love the analogy between sports and acting, because that's why we go back to watch sports, because they're all trying to win the game. Nobody's sitting there going,
man. There's tons of drama.
Yep. So good.
Yeah, Brady going back to play New England. There's drama there.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. People care less.
and Brady hugging on the field. You're like, what's that?
Exactly.
People care less about the game than the hug afterwards.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then the whole locker room thing after that. So
right.
But so I wanted to ask you about your experience working on Muti. And what was that like?
Okay, so Muti is a Zulu word for medicine.
Yes.
Okay.
And there is a light side to Muti, which is, healing people and bringing, people health and well-being. Yeah. And there's a dark side to Muti, which deals in ritual sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Yep. And this was a movie starring Morgan Freeman, who,
yes,
you just say the name and you get it.
Yeah.
And Cole Hauser, who stars on Yellowstone and is starred in so many movies. He's a fabulous actor and great to work with. And we shot in Jackson, Mississippi. And supposedly I'm leaving for Rome in the next few weeks, I think, but I haven't heard from the production yet, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But that was the first question they asked me was, can you go to Rome? And I was like, today?
Nice. So you still have some shooting to do then?
Yeah, that's what I've been led to believe.
Okay.
As you know,
yeah.
We hear from production when we hear from production. That's how that goes. In the meantime, I'm doing a play and working and teaching and writing and doing so many other things that when that thing happens, we'll deal with it when it happens.
So we're not going to talk about this during the show, but I just want to let you know, and we can talk about this later. I actually have very personal experience with Muti because I dated at one point an African Sangoma.
Oh, a Sangoma. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I know like the details of what you're talking about.
The medicine person who did a Sangoma. Right.
Yeah. So
at the heart of this, I'm working with, if we're going to go back to football, Vernon Davis.
Oh, wow.
Plays the Sangoma, who in Vernon
really?
Davis, All-Pro he played for the 49ers, started his career there, went to Denver, won a Super Bowl, ended his career in Baltimore in Washington with the Washington football team. And so, and he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, you guys talking about classical theater earlier.
Yeah.
He's like, so where did you get your training? I was like, well, I was classically trained. I'm like, what is that like? I said, well, I think it's the foundation.
Yeah.
Like as an athlete, you build an athletic foundation built on, the things that you need to excel at whatever sport you're doing.
Right.
And for me, if I wanted to be an actor, I felt like classical training was the foundation that I wanted to build my artistic life on.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I looked at it as well. Yeah,
amazing.
It's interesting. We lost Jewel Walker, one of our coaches, Chris, recently, and I went back I'm working on this documentary about him. We shot him and asked him a bunch of questions. Shot him, meaning on film, and
that's how he died.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's not how he died. We shot him with the cameras. And one of the things it's amazing to me because he was so like he didn't think what he was teaching was actually applicable to film and TV, but I found it to be some of the most like useful stuff was the idea of stillness and, holding on to that power. And, and so I tried to share that with him. He wasn't quite, I don't know if he heard what I was saying, but I was very grateful for what he taught us.
Oh yeah.
In regards to it.
Yeah. The places where you speak from, come from, I feel like, I call it being in the pocket. Like definitely. Pocket that you're going to live in, and that pocket is a calm place that is filled with intentional tension.
Nice, yeah, good.
Not tension that you just have because it's a tense moment,
right?
But there's intentionality to whatever pressure is being brought in the moment.
Yeah,
but you have to live in that. You have to start in that pocket and be calm and be at this neutral place. Because if you start leaning one way or the other, we can get back to the sports analogies. It's the shortstop,
Right.
The shortstop has got to be in that neutral position because they're looking at the pitcher throwing the ball and the position of the batter when he makes contact with it so that he can forecast the trajectory of the ball.
Right. Yeah.
And then you make the move based on that.
Yeah.
In that split second.
Yep.
So if you're coming from that, just living in that pocket and then reacting in that moment, that makes all the difference in the world because you don't have the tension that's holding you back from reacting in whatever way is present.
Great. I love that analogy. That works really well. Yeah. Being the shortstop and getting ready to go right or left or wherever you need to go to get
or that. Or if it's Leslie Rydell, it's playing tennis.
That's right. Yes, that's right. That's another one of our coaches, Chris, Leslie Rydell. I said this earlier and I have to ask you about your experience on Cobra Kai. I was so great to just I already knew you were on the show and we weren't watching it yet, but I kept telling Heidi, my wife is Heidi Eklund. She's also a casting director. She runs Hudson Valley Casting. And I was like, we got to watch Cobra Kai because Brian's on it. But, with But we started getting really into it. So we really,
great. The nostalgia
we really
of
had
the show.
The nostalgia has been great. So what was your experience like being on the show and
it
working
was
with
fabulous,
those guys?
Billy. It's a great set. This was back when it was on YouTube. It wasn't even on Netflix yet.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Still a YouTube
that's
Red
right.
show.
Yeah.
And so they didn't know where it was getting picked up. I think I was on the second or third episode. And I will say that the Apple Brown Betty was outstanding. If anybody's seen the show,
you got to check out the show, Chris, to know what that reference is. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a great, fabulous set. You walked on. It was, people were wonderful.
Great.
I actually ended up ADRing most of that scene.
Oh, did you? Did you have to do? Wow.
Yeah. So we were, so I got.
Because you guys were in a restaurant, right? Is that the part that you had to?
Yeah, we were in a closed restaurant. It was
down.
It was just us in there.
Yeah.
But there were some sound issues, and I listened to it now. I was like, oh yeah, I can tell where we were coming in and out. But it was
right. Yeah.
But it was wonderful. It's and that show, being on a show like that it just has such incredible fandom.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of wonderful people who are fans of the show that
great.
reach out to me. Somebody created like a baseball card.
Right.
Of my character, PJ.
Oh, that's awesome.
With like the stats. It was so like, that's really like you feel like you're a member of the Comic-Con community.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's very, very cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was that kind of fan base, that they were that proactive. That's really cool.
Everybody who's on it.
Karate Kid, it goes back 30 years, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had to show Willoughby, my son, who's 11. We had to show him the original movies first, and then we're like, okay, now we're going to watch this, and he also loves it. So it's a lot of fun. So kudos to you. Anyway, it was great seeing you.
I did not do the cliche sweep the leg.
Right.
He gets enough of that. I was
I'm sure.
Him as an actor, I was like, we're just gonna shoot the scene.
Right.
So, what would you say is the biggest difference working on TV versus working on film, and also how does that differ from theater?
Well, film and television. It just depends, if you're shooting multi-camera or if you're shooting single camera, stuff. There's a little different dynamic that you bring to it. I did some sitcom when I lived in LA, so that dynamic that you bring to a sitcom is not quite the same as you're going to bring to Muti.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully not.
but you see some of that now, like kind of in the MCU dynamic. They will bring some of that humor.
They do,
and it works really well. So you're seeing crossover kind of. In that regard. But when it comes to theater and film, the best way that I describe it is that it's a medium of proximity.
Mm-hmm.
In the theater, you're speaking to your deaf and blind grandmother who's sitting in the balcony, in the back of the balcony, in a 1,000-seat house.
Mm-hmm.
Film and television is this.
Right, yeah.
And
or right
my eyes are the vehicles of gesture. So if I'm focused on something and then I look back at you and start to speak, it creates a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And you've just got to be aware of those dynamics, because if I just start darting my eyes around, it is just as distracting as if I don't know what to do with my
right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That and the blinking too. Like if you're doing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was working with my students today, and I've got the most amazing group of students. One of my students is currently in the feature film Till, about Emmett Till. One of my dear friends is playing the lead in it, Daniel Deadweiler, who's just a wonder of an actor. And she's playing Emmett's mother in this movie.
Wow. Ooh,
and so here's this kid, he's in college and he's on this major motion picture.
Yeah, great.
And so one of my students is up there working today, doing a scene, and her eyes are doing the darty thing, but she's still, but it's the eye thing. So I walked up to her and I turned off the monitor so that the other students couldn't see what we were doing. And I walked up and I told her, I said, I pulled up a chair that had a lot of slats and holes in the back of it. And I said, when you're not speaking to your scene partner here, I want you to count how many holes are in this chair.
Nice. Good.
And then when you're in the scene, be in the scene with them. And when you're not, just go back to counting the holes.
Nice.
And so we went back and then I showed the class, we watched the clip again. I watched the beginning, the two different dynamics at the beginning. I said, what do you see is different? And they all said they're active. Like I can see her actively engaged in something.
Yes.
While she's, when she was counting the holes, they didn't know what she was engaged in, but they felt the thought part that thinking is an action.
Yes.
On camera.
Yes.
And so that was the big difference. And
nice. I just had a long conversation with a student about this idea. Yeah, the thinking is an action as well.
Yeah. So the exercise that I give my students, you put them at a bus stop and then you shoot them all, in a group shot, and you don't give them any direction. And then you give each of them an activity.
Yes.
Count the cracks on the floor, do a math problem, figure out the lyrics to a song, whatever
right. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you shoot them again, and you don't tell the class what you've given them, and then you watch the playback and you go, okay, what's the difference in what's going on in this thing? And they go, well, everybody's really got something on their mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas before they were showing. And one of my friends, Catherine Dyer, who you might know from Stranger Things,
yes,
an agent in the first season,
yeah.
Amazing actor. She says,
oh, I'm so sorry about that. That's my little dogs in the background. I'm going to mute myself so we can hear your story.
Okay. But she said, her thing was, don't show, no. And in our parlance, Wayne, it would be just be, again,
yeah,
you're enough. Don't show me that you're thinking, think. Come up with something to think about, even if it's outside of the realm of the story. It's better if it's engaged in the story, but we as the audience are going to make up what you're thinking anyway.
Right.
So don't worry about that it's not necessarily engaged in the story, but just get yourself engaged in something. You'll get better at it as you get more facile with the activity. It's like any muscle. You just got to develop it over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of like active listening is an action. Right.
Yeah,
if you,
it is.
Really listening to your scene partner, you're focused on them.
Yeah. And figuring out that activity can be really a good key to making these things work. Okay. I think. Yeah. So now I know we've sort of talked about this already, the sports analogies and things like that. And I did want to ask you this question about your wrestling career from previously, because we had John Posey is our Lifetime Achievement Award winner this year at Hunter Mountain Film Festival. And he wrote the film Legendary, which is a wrestling film. A young wrestler, I guess his dad was a award-winning wrestler, and he decides he's going to get into wrestling to try to bring his family back together. It looks really sweet. I haven't watched it yet, but I do.
Is it pro wrestling or is it?
Our type of wrestling. But John Cena was one of the stars because he was doing it through WWE to get it produced. So they had to use John Cena as the star, but it's about our type of wrestling. Not Greco-Roman, but collegiate. Yeah. Freestyle. Yeah. Freestyle. As far as I know, that's what it looked like to me. It didn't look like Greco-Roman because they were doing the holds and stuff like that on the ground. Right. So have those skills? I mean, I know like generally like the skills of an elite athlete do come into play as an actor, but have your actual like wrestling skills ever been, come into play for anything that you've had to do?
When you're doing fights.
Yeah.
And so I know how to fall.
Right.
Unlike some of our classmates.
Right.
I don't want to get sued. And how to lift people.
Right.
And so early on, I was the guy that was, playing Richmond in Richard III and jumping, fighting Richard and getting knocked off an 8-foot ledge down onto the stage, rolling and then picking back up the fight.
Yes.
So all of those things but that was at age,
right.
29, 30.
Yeah, exactly.
At 55.
Yeah.
I'm okay now. Like I've gotten my back.
Right. I can walk down steps, right? That's
taken care of. I'm doing dance numbers and Heathers and
yeah, good. That's
but
great.
I have a acute sense of my physical life.
Yeah.
But other than that, if asked to do stunts, I will leave it up to the professionals.
Nice. Very nice. I have to ask you this personal question. Do you remember when we fasted for 5 days?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wasn't that intense? Man.
Oh, I did that. Like, yeah, you did it. Like, I did it. That's the summer before.
Right.
For like a week.
You enrolled me in it at school. We did it for like a week.
And then we did it at school.
Yeah.
And it was because our schedule at school, we were like, 7 o'clock in the morning until.
Yeah, I was telling Chris about this earlier.
Yeah, he told me
until we understood how to get out of going until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's right. I didn't tell you that part, Chris. So sometimes we would have what's called completion at the end of the day of grad school, and you couldn't leave until everyone was complete. So people would stand up and they would like say these things. Oh, so-and-so touched my stuff and I was upset about it. And it would go sometimes till like 3 a.m, some of these things. And
One of our older classmates, God bless him, said, ladies and gentlemen, I have completing.
Yep.
I will no longer be joining you in the evening. I hope you feel complete with that because I'm complete with that.
Yeah.
And at that moment we went,
we can just be complete. That's right. We never stayed up till 3 a.m. again.
That was it.
Yeah. Yep. That
you
was
guys
awesome.
you guys are both better than me. I think I did a 5-day fast one time in about 3 hours. Right? I started thinking about it after the first hour, and I when it comes to the physicality, I think what I can bring to the table is a concussion playing football in college. That's about all I learned how to do. Yeah.
Right.
Get a concussion.
Yeah.
I had a few, but I know my wrestling friends, they were all doing the same thing. They had to sweat. They had to lose the weight. They had to get to the scale and all that. And but you guys didn't do it for that, right? You just did it.
No, we were doing it for, just as an exercise in grad school, but I don't know if you know this, Brian, but I was actually a wrestler in high school. I was terrible. I was like the worst person on my team.
It doesn't matter. You're part of the brotherhood, man.
It was fun though. I really enjoyed, my time doing it.
It's the sport of kings.
Yeah. It was great. My mom hated it, of course, because she was always worried about.
My father had to tie my mother's shoes to her seat.
Yeah.
When I was at the state championships, my senior year, because she's like, my college career is riding on this match.
Yep.
If I win, I'm going to college. If I lose, it's questionable. I was always going to college, but definitely winning made a difference.
Yeah. But
so I'm curious about your time as executive director of the Alabama Film Office. So tell us more about that experience and what were your biggest challenges and biggest rewards?
I was working at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. I got a call from the then governor. Wow. And I'm backstage and can you hold for the governor? Yeah, sure. Now I had a wife who I think we had our first child at that point. Mm-hmm. That's why I had my phone with me at all times because I had a newborn baby. Mm-hmm. And so the governor calls and he says, hey, Brian, he's a very Clinton-esque guy. He says, you would like to work in my film office. And I said, Governor, if I don't get on stage right now, I'm going to have to start tomorrow. And he's like, no, man, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Now, listen, can we talk a little later today? And so I spoke to him and he said, come down to the Capitol. I want you to meet with a few people and let's have a conversation.
Nice.
So I go down to the Capitol and I'm surrounded by the head of economic development for the state, the head of tourism for the state, the governor, the governor's chief of staff. Now, at the time, my wife was the press secretary to the governor. Mm-hmm. She was a former news anchor, and she is a brilliant woman, and she did wonderful things, and continues to do wonderful things in her career. And so that was kind of how I knew the governor and first lady. So I said, Governor, after having my conversation with everybody in the room, I said, I only have one question. If we can get past this, I think, we're good to go. I said, what makes you think I am remotely qualified for this
job? Nice.
And he said, oh, Brian, it's exactly that question. I think you can do a great job. We're going to recruit movies and we just want to promote the state and we think you're the guy to do it.
Nice.
And And I was like, and I was at this point in my career where I thought, all I know how to do is act.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a sense of I had taught at UAB in Montgomery, not UAB, Auburn University in Montgomery, AUM. And the experience was okay, but I wasn't ready to dive deep into teaching at that point. And so I really was thinking, I need an MBA. Like, I need to learn a skill. If I'm going to move forward in my career, I need some financial stability, not just for myself, but for my growing family.
Sure.
And so I took the opportunity. And now I grew up in politics, so I had some kind of, understanding of the political landscape. So the first thing I did was have legislation drafted for economic incentives for the industry. And I learned a lot about the economic impact that the film industry was having and the arts that were having on Montgomery and on the state of Alabama, and then nationally. And I would travel around the state of Alabama talking to economic development organizations or chambers of commerce, mayors, city councils, about the importance of growing this industry in their region and what it could mean. And we passed in a special, this was during 9/11, mind you. It was September of 2001 that we entered this legislation into a special session. 9/11 happens, everything shuts down. But we get this legislation passed. Everybody thought it was dead on arrival. But I walked the halls of the legislature. I talked to Republican and Democrats. I said, it's not a political.
Not partisan.
This is about jobs.
Yeah.
And we helped create jobs in every corner of the state. And we landed the largest feature film in the history of the state. So we worked on Big Fish.
Wow.
One of my favorites.
Taking Tim Burton and Richard Zanuck.
Nice.
And Academy Award winning production designer Dennis Gassner around. And funny story, I took them around. I created this 127-mile tour of the surrounding area of Montgomery to show them every location where they could shoot the movie.
Nice.
And I did it. They said, it's going to take us 3 days to do that. I said, I think it's going to take us about 4.5 hours.
Nice.
They said, you're crazy. Now, what they didn't know is I had already rehearsed the drive and had it all timed out. I had people that were driving ahead of us to open up things. So we had it all choreographed.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And we took them around, and they were like, this is amazing. We can go on to Savannah now. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I just lost my desire to be efficient and show them as much in one day.
Right, yeah.
Was going to be my demise. So, but they flown on a private plane, so they had a few hours to kill. So I said, well, why don't I take you out to eat? Let's go get something to eat. So I take Tim Burton and the whole entourage. I drive this circuitous route because I know they don't know where they are. So I can take any route I want. And they're going to think it's the direct route.
Right, exactly.
So I show them other locations that I didn't have scheduled on. I had it scheduled for the next day.
Nice.
And then I walk into this Mexican restaurant in my neighborhood, and the bartender's like, is that who I was like, just be quiet.
Yeah.
Make me 2 pitchers of margarita and make it really, really, I like put a ton of tequila in there.
Yes.
Because the next day I want them sick as hell when they're driving through Savannah. And 24 hours later, I got a call. Hey, Brian, we're coming back to Montgomery. Can you get us 2 boats and take us up the Coosa River?
Awesome. That's a great story, Brian. That is so cool.
I don't even know how to ask another question.
Well, exactly. It's such a great story.
Perfect.
So how did your tenure there end then?
My tenure ended with the election of another governor.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought. I wasn't sure how that all worked. Yeah.
Our guy, he was a one-term governor, and I had actually was offered a job. But my wife and I were planning on moving to Birmingham, and I did not want to be commuting 95 miles one way.
Right.
Every day.
Oh yeah.
So I left that behind and then for the next 7 years, I was doing public relations and brand and design work.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that next.
It's all in the storytelling vein. Like all of the stuff that I've done over the years, and I think it goes, for a lot of different professions, it really is about storytelling. And I learned a lot in my time working as an account executive for a brand and design firm, where I was working with communities that were building these new urbanist communities that were being developed all around the country at that time. It's right before the financial downturn. So real estate boom was huge.
Yeah, I think that's when I came to see you, was when you were starting that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
when
right.
You were doing Lion King.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so I was doing all of that then. And so I would create the histories of these communities that had yet to be built.
Nice. Yeah, I remember you sharing that with me and talking about that at the time that I think you were just getting started, and you were like very excited about the stories of these places that didn't exist yet. Now, were you also coaching people in like how to speak and things like that as well? Was that?
I'd done that while I was in Montgomery. I was doing a lot of on-air coaching. I had a couple of and that was mostly voice and speech stuff.
Oh, okay, sure.
Helping people how to breathe. There were some news anchors, or particularly people who do weather, that had to cross from, the desk over to the weather map, and they'd be out of breath, and they were wondering how to control their breathing and how to maintain, their focus, and then speech and pronunciation stuff. So I had some radio personalities that I worked with, and some other, on-air personalities. And then I also had worked with the governor. He would give certain speeches in certain locations, particularly if it was arts related. He would come to me and say, well, what do I need to say? What do I need to know? Is there a Shakespearean quote that would be helpful in this moment? So,
bringing it all back around to Shakespeare.
My wife being the press secretary would be like, and she was she's the boss. She's a cabinet member.
Oh,
like,
right.
She was the boss then, she's the boss now.
Yeah.
And we just celebrated our 23rd anniversary. So
hey, congratulations, Brian. That's great. That's great.
Actually, as did we, just just about 3 weeks ago, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, that's right.
23.
I love this meeting of the Silver Foxes.
Exactly.
That's right. Yes.
We were going to call it that, but
Yes, I do like it when I'm included in a Silver Fox conversation.
Yeah.
It's good.
But it sounds like
a lot of there's a lot of silver in this conversation.
I know, right? A lot of senior discounts, but
yeah, exactly. Getting there.
And it sounds like you were not only a consultant, but in politics you were a whip and a lobbyist. You were like everything above, right?
It was part. That was part of the deal. They'd never had legislation like this passed before. Wow. And one of the things that was a problem with this, one of the big lobbying groups was opposed to the kind of legislation because it took away from where they got funding.
Right.
But what they didn't, what we knew, or what I had found out, was that the head of this organization had a daughter who was an actress.
Oh.
And so I was like, I think we're going to be okay on this. I don't think we're going to get a lot of pushback. Oh, no, you're going to get a lot of pushback. I said, I think if we can get out of committee, we're going to be okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you did.
You're a smart gentleman. You're a smart gentleman there, Mr. Kurlander.
Well, it was just, listen, fake it till you make it. That's
Well, Well, I have another multi-part question for you. And I want to ask you, Brian, what is has been your biggest challenge as an actor? And also, what would you say was the most rewarding thing about being an actor?
The most challenging thing is that balance that you create in your life. I think a lot of actors focus on this one slice of their life, which is, I am an actor.
Right.
And if that slice if you don't put all the toppings on that slice, it feels very empty.
Yes.
And flavorless. So you've got to look at your whole life as the whole pie. And this is just one small slice.
Yeah.
And you've got to fill in those other areas. And if being creative is part of who you are, which it is, it's always been part of who I am. it's important to fulfill those things that you need to fulfill in the other areas of your life. And whether that is through volunteering or being in the community, or as we heard ad nauseum during our years in grad school, but it's an important lesson. What are you serving?
Exactly. Yeah, no, so important. Yeah.
Getting outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Because part of that idea of being like, feeling like you are enough, is also knowing I'm enough, so I don't have to worry so much about me.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to do other things that benefit other people, because I get it's challenging, and it asks something of me that, you know, I may not know how to do in the moment, but I'll figure it out. So it keeps me mentally sharp.
Yes.
And so that's the challenge. The reward is the profound joy that you get from the act of doing what you love.
Yes. Yeah.
That's like when you get to do something you love and you get to do it regularly, and it's taken 30 years of hard work to get to a point where I can do what I love regularly. It's one of the only few professions in the world where it's not a meritocracy.
Right. Exactly.
It's not based on your like how good you are.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of immensely talented people who no one will ever see.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the opportunities now for this generation, because of the multitude of platforms that you can get on and exhibit your talents. Well, we're in a different realm right now. But for guys like us, that wasn't the case. And so finding that, like, getting to that point, you know, is a little more daunting. But but building a career, that, you know, and building a life.
Yeah. And I always say too, the community that surrounds it too is just so incredible to be a part of.
Absolutely.
And you know, Wayne and I have had this discussion many times, because he's coached me in many different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think, Wayne, you might agree with this. It always seems to come back to have fun. Just have fun.
I know it seems like the cliche thing to tell somebody right before you go up, but it's a really important part of it, you know. How is it
I took it to heart.
I think it's
I mean, they're called plays. I mean,
exactly
plays.
Yes,
you gotta play, have fun. We're all just expressing our inner child, so let's just do it.
Exactly.
Well, I know for me, when I'm working on a script for an audition or whatever, and actually, Wade and I were just talking about this recently, how I had this one particular thing that I like everything else. Well, all auditions are self-taped now for the most part.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I was like, just not satisfied with it. And I wasn't having fun. And the next morning I got up, I was like, you know, I'm just going to do it again. I'm starting from scratch, much to my readers' chagrin, who was my wife.
Your wife.
But this time, that sense of whatever I was feeling, it took over, and I had fun, and the performance was so much different.
Yeah, it was really great. You did send those along to me. That was really
and the end result was a callback.
Yeah.
And so it's that feeling that you have when you just, you know, you're doing something in a scene or whatever that's touching the right marks, and all of a sudden that you feel that joy of getting it. First, there's the challenge, then you've done it, then the joy. And you know, it's like an improv, because I do a lot of improv. It's when you get feedback from the audience because you've satisfied what they want to hear.
Right.
You know, that makes the payoff.
So powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's what keeps us doing it, even though it's tough, you know, is that when we get those moments where there's clarity or some kind of payoff in some way where you go, oh, maybe that's what it is. Right. You know, like just that glimmer of life and of, you know, living in the moment is just beautiful when it happens. So Brian, you've shared so many amazing stories with us right now. Do you have any, this is one we usually say toward the end here. Do you have another like funny or moving story from a film set or a TV set that you could share with us? Like a funny thing that happened?
I'll tell you two stories quick.
Okay, great. Awesome.
So one's a theater story. So before I went to the PTTP, I'm auditioning for a show in New York. It's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Okay.
It's for like the out of town before they go to Broadway revival.
Yep. Okay.
And I walk into the room and I'm shaking hands with everybody, as the young actors like a moron do.
Right.
Hey, I'm Brian, you are, and you are, and you are. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. What was your name?
Man.
He said, I'm Edward Albee.
Oh my God.
I backed out of the room. I walked out of the room, immediately walked out of the room. I walked back into the room. Mr. Albee, what a privilege.
How did you respond to that?
Nice.
He was not impressed.
Yeah. Did you backed out and said, pretend this didn't happen? And then you came.
Yeah, no, I was like, it did. And there's no callback for me. Thank you.
Oh man. Let me tell you quick before you go to your second story. So when I was finishing up my auditions for Lion King, my agent sent me to the wrong room, and I go bursting into this room, and I was like, "You're Neil Simon." And it was like, yes, I am. You're in the wrong room. I was like, I know, bye, but it was nice to see you. I did the same thing. I backed out. I was like, Neil Simon is not directing the Lion
King. He's not directing the Lion King.
I was looking for Julie Taymor, but found Neil Simon.
Searching for Julie Taymor.
Exactly. Tell us your second story. What's your second?
The second story was in 2001 when I just left the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, and I was working in the film office. And they called me, the Shakespeare Festival called me at the film office, and they said, hey, listen, the Mississippi Symphony Orchestra is doing an evening of Shakespeare-inspired music, and they need an actor. We have a show going on. They need an actor who can come on stage and do Shakespearean monologues. Since we have actors, and you're not an actor anymore, would you be willing to go to Mississippi to do this? And I was like, yeah, sure, it'd be fun. Yeah. I'm the boss, so I can come and go as I want.
Right, sure.
So that was great. So I said, yeah, of course I'll do it, because I never said no. And so the whole thing was Morgan Freeman was scheduled to do it, and they were hiring me just to cover him, just in case, because he was shooting Chain Reaction with Keanu Reeves at the time, and they were apparently over schedule, so he might not be able to make it.
Right.
So I'm on set with Morgan, and of course I'm doing this all in a British accent because I'm in dialect and on the movie.
Right.
So I'm trying to do this in a British dialect, which is really tough. I won't do it right now. But I tell Morgan, I was like, so Morgan, can I tell you this story?
Yeah.
Can I tell you my Morgan Freeman story?
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, of course, I'd like to hear your Morgan Freeman story. So I tell him up to that part. I said, so you were shooting Chain Reaction, and you weren't going to be late, and you might not be able to make it. It turned out that you didn't make it. I went on for you, and I want you to know that that's the last time I'm ever doing that.
Right. That's amazing.
And he was so gracious. He laughed. He said, that's a great story. And I said, great, can I get a selfie?
Right. Yeah. That's how you got it. I was actually thinking about, should I ask him how he got his selfie with Morgan Freeman? That's excellent. It's a great selfie. Yeah. Yeah.
Not many people can claim they
went on. Yeah,
because I'm the obvious choice to go on for Morgan.
Well, here's my question: did you do all of the Shakespeare, like to be or not to be? Right, you had to slow it down.
A voiceover from March of the Penguins.
Yeah, exactly. in the Shakespearean times, yeah.
Right. Or Shawshank Redemption.
Exactly, yeah, or Shawshank. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
You can just start doing that instead. Awesome.
I don't do a Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, thank you though for sharing those two great stories.
Oh, my pleasure.
And Wayne, you do actually do a pretty good Morgan Freeman.
I've done it occasionally. I'm not going to do it now.
Oh, come on! I think I heard a little bit right there.
A little tiny bit, but I gotta be in the right mode for that.
Get in the zone.
That's right. Get in the zone. Get in the pocket. Gotta get in the pocket.
Brian, do you have any advice for young actors just starting out in the business?
Yeah, get training, man. Just find good people who bring out the best in you, but get training. And whether that is on camera training, whether that is classical training, work on your voice. It's like going to the gym. You got to work the muscles that the industry requires, but also know all the elements of it. Be an entrepreneur. So be a writer, create your content, put it out there, shoot stuff, learn how to edit, learn how to shoot, learn how to write, start with short films, do a 5-minute little feature. It doesn't matter. Just create. Because the more you start creating, the more you build the community around you that wants to create and has your same vision, or can help to evolve your vision, the more opportunities you're going to have. Because anybody who's doing anything in this business is creating their own content.
Yeah,
sure. And there's such a demand for content right now. Think about this. All of the streaming platforms combined are investing somewhere in the neighborhood of like $100 billion in content creation. And there are not enough studio spaces in the world to house the content that is being created. So there's opportunities for people. There's opportunities, to create an artistic middle class, which there has never been.
I like that idea. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah.
Or you've made it.
Right.
But, there's more opportunities now because there's more demand, and there are more platforms that need to be supplied with the demand of content.
Yeah,
sure.
So that's my advice to young artists.
Brian,
great advice.
Brian, it's so good to see your face.
Likewise, my friend.
We got to see each other whenever you're back in New York.
I'll be up soon. I'll give you a call.
Okay, good. Yeah, so we can come down and hang out. It's so great to see you. I want to just smoosh you. But before we go tonight, how can people find you if they're looking for you online? What's a good place to go?
You can find me on Instagram, Brian-Kurlander1.
We'll put a little
find
thing
me on
up
Twitter, Kurlander Brian. I don't do Facebook. I do Facebook, but
I've stopped using it too.
Tough to know who's who.
Yeah, exactly.
You can check me out on IMDb. I got 3 movies coming out. Home Safe, Muti, and I star in the feature Black Basalm.
Awesome.
Oh, yes.
I'm definitely going to check those out for sure. I hope you will at home as well. Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience tonight before we go?
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you, Brian. And thank you so much for being here tonight. I know Wayne's been looking so forward to this, and everything he's told me, he's made me look forward to meeting you for the first time. So glad we did.
Likewise, guys.
Thanks.
And for those of you watching, don't forget to check out all the other great content at Hunter Mountain Film Festival. We'll be online this year from October 22nd through the 24th at huntermountainfilmfestival.com.
There it is right there. That was a lot of fun, folks. I have to say, until next time, thank you for being a part of our film and TV community. And please remember to stay safe, be well, and keep telling those stories. Chris, it looks like it's that time again.
It sure is, Wayne. It's time to
roll the credits. Time to leave. Bye. Thanks so much, Brian. We'll talk to you soon. All right. I'll see you soon, man. Take care.
Cut.
Nicely done.